it doesn't kind of relate to this noble argument that they're making, that we can't possibly get rid of the commissions. We can't possibly guarantee, as the fiduciary rule would do, that we will act always in the best interest of you, and we will be legally responsible if we do not. We can't do that because it will keep the most vulnerable members of society from getting good financial advice. And this is the worst part, because then they say, and it is our priority, that those people get sound financial advice. Even though the argument seems stupid, there is a bit of a nuance behind like accessible advice versus kind of what the real cost is. Like, and we're not talking about fees, but like if the cost is they might not be giving you good advice, but they kind of have to give you okay advice. But like where's the line as far as not the end result perfect world line, but like what's good enough for now?
There's two things that are happening, and one of them is about financial literacy is one of the things I want to kind of have you bring me back to, because I want to make a point about it. But the thing is, the kind of free advice that people are getting, first of all, it's a business model, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to be the person that's like, oh, the banks make billions of dollars in profits, but what is the reasonable level of expectation for something that is necessary? Banking is really a necessary service. That's why in the Bank Act, people have to be able to get at least one checking account, right? Even with substandard identification, even with terrible credit, you still have to have access to a bank account, because so many things now, most government benefits aren't even paid in a check anymore.
Yeah.
You have to have a bank account. I was going somewhere with this. If it's a necessary service, and if there is some life and death decisions, really, not necessarily life and death, but pretty big. Like, for example, here's something that somebody with not a lot of money could very conceivably, and has done in the past, go into a bank and expect that I can't pay somebody $2,000 to answer this question. It feels like I can't.
Yeah.
But I just got let go from my job. I'm too old to find another job. They're offering me a defined benefit pension plan, but I also could have the commuted value. I feel like this is it. I won't be able to save any more money.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with it. What should I do with this? Well, what is the bank going to answer? There is never a time where somebody who's just sitting there, who has not been trained specifically, do you really want to say that a system that's just, maybe by chance that person knows things about defined benefit pension plans or could assess the health of the pension plan that you have? Probably they can't. And most likely, the kind of training that they have is the training that they get on a sales call to say, well, if that grows at 5% and it's in your control, isn't that way better than just some defined benefit? Interest rates are so low, right? Yeah. That's the conversation. So for those people who were saying they don't have enough money to get really good financial advice, what is actually the net effect of the shitty advice that is likely they're going to get from this free advice?
Yeah.
I'm not as concerned about people with loads and loads of money that are going to get conflicted advice, because in the end, it's just a kind of bottom line thing.
No, it's the most vulnerable people. It's the people that honestly, like you said, feel like they can't afford to spend, even if they know that something like a fee-only option exists, or somebody outside the banking system who. Let's not even say outside the system or fee only, somebody who's trained specifically in the questions that they have, who can answer their questions and may cost an amount of money, exists. They may not know. How would they know? Because the same title applies to both of those people.
And there's been a lot of cultural buildup to say that person behind the desk is there. It's your friend. You're richer than you think. Blah, 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 blah. The bank manager's my friend.
Well, and
that's cultural.
They have an office, and I'm sorry, but like if you have a question about your money and you don't know about money, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the bank.
The place that looks like it has money.
Well, it does have money. Having money is not their problem. That's
not their problem at all.
I think
so. Here's the other thing. So what we're saying is we're worried about that's kind of let's all tie our, you know, arguments to the backs of these people who are actually really quite vulnerable.
Okay.
They're going to suffer. They're already suffering, number one. And number two, the solution inevitably in a really capitalist, profit-driven model is it's buyer beware in a sense. The suitability standard is buyer beware. If we don't want to kind of split hairs, but okay, so the solution is we should teach them more. So the Ontario Securities Commission should build a website, Get Smarter About Money, and we should teach them more about it, because then that way they can go and they can make informed decisions. Informed decisions don't mean anything if they don't have the money in the first place. And so again, this financial literacy thing, which is not universally bad, but is essentially a way to say, here's the system that we built. You're vulnerable for any number of reasons. Your only chance of success is fitting yourself into this system that we built. Here's a bunch of help to fit yourself into that system. Instead of, this system sucks, it doesn't serve you. Let's find ways to make the system actually serve you. I spit a little bit while I was talking about that.
But I guess the question that I'd have is, in this specific situation where the debate down south, and the debate here too, is around a regulation. And so do regulations help? And that kind of blows up the focus again. But like whether it's CRM2, whether it's the fiduciary rule that they're talking about in the States, can regulations help exactly these people that we're talking about?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to answer it with a discussion, a comment on the pension and income-tested benefits program in Canada and the provinces.
As I would expect you to.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So the tidy thinkers want to have one solution that makes sense to everybody and is easy, right? So, okay, here it is. We're going to have this thing, and it's going to solve all the problems. But the reality is, if a system doesn't work and it's made up of a bunch of little systems, and all those systems were created to address something that just kind of came up, probably that system, as untidy and probably as, administratively expensive it is more efficient at handling all the variations in human experience than one system that was created to kind of do the best job for the most amount of people. Because in general, that means people are going to suffer, right?
Yeah.
So with regulation, it's like a game of Tetris, right? Like, so here comes, okay, well, we're getting one of these blocks. So we're going to regulate to make sure that this system that right now very clearly does not serve a lot of these people, we're going to make it so hopefully it serves them a little bit better. Now we're creating this other thing. And what are the unintended consequences of banning embedded commissions? Well, there's people who their whole job depends on earning commissions. And now those people are not going to be as successful in the industry that they trained for, if we want to use that word. Some of them, I'm sure, have trained. Even if it's just
experience, there's people that have spent 30 years in that business,
Exactly. And their mode of thinking is that way. They've invested, they've in the same way that you use something like Norbert's Gambit or whatever, you're like expecting that set of legislation is going to be there in that way, because that's the way you've oriented all of your. And I don't mean specifically like all these people are saying, I'm going to go into this career because of the suitability standard.
No, but they bought into the idea that this is how the industry works well, and there's a certain amount of compensation that exists within the industry, and this is what I need to be doing, and people come in and I give them a product which is fine for them, even if it's not the best for them, because that's the idea of the suitability standard and oversimplification. Like, it's not like they're not selling people like a lame donkey if they came in looking for a tractor, but they're maybe selling them a really bad tractor. Is that maybe a terrible metaphor? Okay.
No, it's a good metaphor. I think it might be kinder to some of the things that are out there.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. There
are some lame donkeys.
I guess, this might be as good a time as any to speak to what you talk about all the time too, is the fact that there are a lot of good and well-meaning people within the system, within the financial system, that really want to help people. But even those people are hamstrung by the system that they're in. And they're hamstrung by the way that they are compensated. And it's not like the commission structure can't work ever, but it's clearly built up so that it isn't working for a lot of people. And it's specifically like and I love the fact that, you kind of focused in on the most vulnerable people, because it's really not working for them, for people who they say benefit the most from having access to free advice. And I think that in the same way that we talk about CRM2 and the idea of disclosing fees, which they did a terrible job of because they're not disclosed at all. Like, let's just, can we just say that? Like, that needs to be said a ton. Like, they just need to get an F at disclosing fees. It's just absolutely,
But you knew that it would be. There was no way that any of the CRM2 is coming was going to ever come true, because nobody ever said they couldn't send it with a whole bunch of other shit.
Yeah.
And they've had 2 years to say, okay, by that date, we got to have our salespeople trained to be picking up the phone 6 months before those statements go out and say, do you know what CIBC has done for you?
Yeah.
We've created this whole new statement.
Yeah.
Nobody else, those people on the phone think that CIBC just did this great job for them.
Yeah. No, but it's the idea in the same spirit that people are like, people need to know about the fees. People need to know, they need to understand what the real cost of some of this free advice is. And they need to understand, they need to understand who they're talking to. And the fact that if you're somebody walking in the door, you're probably talking to somebody who, if they do know a lot, it's because they did it on their own, not because they had to. And the people that do know a lot, they're working with higher net worth people, because that's the way the system works, and that's fine. But look, let's be honest. We've been going through the same kind of program of taking courses and things like that, and it's clear that the training for certified financial planner, which is kind of what they say is the gold standard and all that stuff, is specifically tilted towards working with high net worth individuals. And that's not a criticism. It's fine. That's how the system works. The system works that people with higher levels of training want to work with higher income people, because those commissions that we talked about are more.
Yeah.
It's capitalism. It's fine. But it doesn't kind of relate to this noble argument that they're making, that we can't possibly get rid of the commissions. We can't possibly guarantee, as the fiduciary rule would do, that we will act always in the best interest of you, and we will be legally responsible if we do not. We can't do that because it will keep the most vulnerable members of society from getting good financial advice. And this is the worst part, because then they say, and it is our priority, that those people get sound financial advice. And it just sounds a bit like, the owner of KFC, the colonel, standing up there and being like, look, we need to make sure America is healthy. And I will make it my job to make sure that we help them be fed. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, but if everybody just eats KFC, they'll be fed, but are they going to be better off? Isn't it the same conversation that we're having? They're like, well, they're getting advice. Well, they're getting fed. Yeah. But it's not the same as health. It's not the same as good. It's not the same as better off. Yeah. There's a bit of a gap there.
Yes, that is a very good metaphor. Excellent. Well done.
Points for Chris. Because it really does become, it's the same reason why fast food is great when you make an informed decision. When you're like, look, I'm going to have fast food today, and I'm going to get that weird heart thing where it goes really fast, and my arm kind of tingles, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to really, really enjoy it, and then I'm going to have some real food later this week because I really want to see my grandchildren. You balance these things out, and then it's fine. They can be a part of a picture of health. It's and if people want to go into the bank and talk to that person because they're not willing to spend, or not feeling like they're able to spend money on financial planning, they just need to know what they're getting. They need to know they're walking into McDonald's, not something else.
I think that's true. And I think at the exact same time, something else is true. And the something else is, we are trained to want to please the people that we're with. We're especially in relationship-based financial advice, where it's, oh, my uncle sells what, or that's my guy. He's been my guy for 20 years. We're not looking at what, because it feels rude and wrong. What am I getting for this relationship? We are actually, I read an interesting article. Now, this is a long time ago. I don't remember anything about it except for this idea of crossing the streams of social and business. So that when you mix up a relationship, like if you're a manager and employee, or if you're an advisor and a client, and you start using the coded kind of language and relationship kind of stuff for relationships, and then you suddenly move to, and now you have to pay me money, or you haven't been doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
It's a huge disconnect for people, because I thought we were friends. I thought, this was all just a friend thing. And I've said this 100,000 times, and nobody gets on board with me, and it's fine, whatever. I honestly feel like, and this is so radical and stupid, it would never happen. It's pie in the sky. But if you and I and Joe's uncle down the street who sells life insurance,
Love
and
that guy.
if I love Joe's uncle down the street who sells life insurance, if all of us walked around and said, here's how much money I have in my bank account, here's how much my house is worth and what my mortgage is, or it would create all sorts of other problems in some ways. But it would also get rid of a whole bunch of other problems. I feel like I'm going down a whole other road, and it's not at all about regulation and this problem of like relationship-based advising. But let me go back to one thing. When I talk to clients very often, and we look at their portfolio and we say, okay, let's talk about what you're actually getting for what you're paying.
Yeah.
Because here's something very similar to what you have, and it costs this much. And this is what you get with that. And here's what you have. What do you get from that?
Yeah.
And very often it's, well, I know him and I like him, or I know her and I like her.
Yeah.
But what are you getting for that? Because they are getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
They are not talking about you as, I know him and I like him and I know her and I like her. If that person came in and I gave them the kind of advice that I could give them, and I sidebar again. Now this is a sidebar of a sidebar. I talk to a lot of people who want to be fee-only planners. Yeah. Many of them are coming from insurance or banking backgrounds. Most of them call me to say, I really want to do what you're doing, and I want to help people, and I feel like I've been helping people, but I feel like I can't, I'm constrained, and I'd like to help them in a different, more expansive way. That's a huge subset. That's like 98% of them. 2% of them call me and say, but do you make any money? And isn't it unfair that we spend all this time on clients and they think it's for free, and we're just giving our time away, and all we get is this check at the end of the month for the commission? And I don't think that you and the client are talking about the same transaction. I feel like there's something.
No, that's an interesting thought right there. And I think that might be at the core of what you're talking about relationship-based finance, and it kind of does tie together.
Something's there.
No, because it ties to this idea of what is free and how to help people. Because it's like, is everybody involved in the same transaction? It's easy when you go to the store and you buy something. You don't know that person, well, that's not actually true. Because, like, you talk about brand loyalty and all that kind of stuff. So, like, if I go and buy my, Apple computer, I'm spending stupid amounts of money, but I've decided it's worth it on a bunch of bases. The product itself, the familiarity I have with it, the customer service that I've gotten in the past and hope to get in the future, just the kind of, and the experiences that I've had with the company's faces. This same idea is like, well, I've just met nice people at the Genius Bar, and I like the experience of going in, and then like a little bit of an aesthetic because they look nice. So like there are elements within that, and trust is a massive thing when you're dealing with something like with relation-based anything, but specifically I would say with something like money, because it is a matter of trust. I think that what you really, and I really agree with what you're saying, is that trust really, it kind of has to flow both ways in a way. And I think that a lot of the time, the transaction has to balance out for, especially in really trust kind of situations. And what the regulations do is they put the advisor's skin in the game.
Yeah.
They say, look, you're going to trust me with your money. You're going to trust me with the fact that I'm going to give you the best advice I can, that I can find defensible in the moment, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to kind of give you that advice based on the information you give me, and make sure that you understand that information in the context that you exist in. And then I'm going to get compensated with a price, which you're going to understand as well and be okay with. And if you did not get what you want, if I somehow misled you deliberately, you have the right to complain about that and to exact some kind of conversation, whether that's in mediation, whether that's in however that kind of comes out, or whether it's in a courtroom. I think that, is it possible that what financial advisors, obviously you don't want to get sued. Nobody wants to get sued. Nobody wants to have that crazy client that wants to get sued, and the cost of all that. But that seems to be more in the States as far as the litigation culture. We're a little bit less like that in Canada. But the idea that we want all the trust to flow one way. We want all the trust to be in, you trust me, I am an expert, I will tell you exactly what, but having no obligation to actually earn and deserve that trust.
See, and so, okay, so why do people go and get financial advice or accounting advice or legal advice? Because the truth is, in some situations, not all, there's some stuff you can find out on your own for sure. But in lots of situations, the person that you're going to advise is billing themselves as somebody that kind of has had experience, that knows where to look, that knows what they don't know, and can do the research and can put it all together in a way that suits you individually.
Yeah.
That means that that person, just by very nature of the fact that you are going to them for advice, has an informational advantage over you. And if that person knows way more about how markets work or how investing works or how mortgage rates work, whatever it is, then they have a higher burden of trust put on them. You are automatically trusting them more. And that means to me that if that person, okay, look, if you said to somebody, I'm punctual, but you had never had to have an appointment where you showed up, how can somebody believe you when you say you're punctual? If you say, I am trustworthy, but you've never worked together, you've never spent 30 years getting investment advice from them, how do you trust them? It cannot be because they're nice Joe's uncle down the street who sells insurance. No. It has to be because they can say, here is my oath to you. I will allow you to have recourse if you feel like I have not fulfilled this oath. And also on top of that, here are all the things that here are all the ways that I could make money that I have said, I'm not going to make money in that way, because in that way, it twists the way that I might give advice to you, even if I feel like I'm really good, I'm a nice person, and I want to do the right thing for you. Also selling referrals to this other financial product and getting remunerated from that kind of might twist my opinion about this, and I want to make sure to avoid that. So many other not so many other, there's only a couple, but lots of other professions require you to not only disclose conflicts, but to actively seek them out and remove them.
Yeah.
So if you think that you are a good enough financial advisor that you can be worth the money that's getting paid to you, why aren't you good enough to not get paid by anything else?
Yeah. There it is.
I don't understand that.
And I'd like to just kind of point out the fact that what you said about the idea of the information
imbalance.
Information imbalance, that's what fiduciary means. That's specific. That's the word they came up with to describe the level of responsibility people with an information imbalance have to the people that come to ask them for help, because they recognize the fact that puts you in a powerful situation, and that's like, people use words like that, and it can be easy for them to kind of just like go in one ear. That word is really important. And it's exactly the spirit of what you said, is that when you go to somebody who knows a ton more than you do about something and you're asking for their advice, that fiduciary responsibility is for them to not abuse the fact that they know more than you, to trick is a malicious way, but they can't abuse that power over you. They have got to try to serve your best interest with that information. And I couldn't agree more with what you're saying about being like, look, and I would say that when you're talking specifically about the decisions that you've made about fee-only planning, the idea that the way you want to get paid, and it's what I believe too, you don't want it to be touched by third-party systems, and kind of that makes you uncomfortable. That's not the way you want to be paid. Look, if you're somebody out there who believes in the commission system and you want to pitch that to your client and show them exactly how it works and say, look, I'm going to show you the products and what the commissions are, and you can pick what you want. And I believe that this does not taint my decision-making capability. And I will show you, I will prove to you that you can still trust me even though this is the way I'm getting paid. Fine, do it. But don't, look, there's a whole conversation we can have about human nature and commissions and the fact that
disclosures and
look, it's totally fair. And I just know that there are some people that really do believe the commission-based system is based on a trust level, and you can't abuse the commission-based system when you're really disclosing everything, because people will just leave you if you're not offering a competitive product. That doesn't happen in the finance industry because there's not that disclosure and there's not that conversation. But if you would come in from the outside and say, as an advisor, I like the commission-based system, I think it can work, I say in this context to this conversation, fine,
yeah.
but put the skin in the game. Say that you're worthy of that trust. Say that you can step up to the fiduciary plate and take a swing, because otherwise you really are you're marketing a lie if you're asking people to trust you with that level of vulnerability and you're not backing it up with anything.
Yeah. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that, well, it's whatever happens to be. And I just had a sales call. I kind of know about that product or whatever. You can't say that it's something easy that you do for people and also something where you shouldn't have to take responsibility for somebody coming in. It just doesn't jive at all. And it makes me angry. So yes, of course, it makes me angry. And I think do away with it.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that I do.
No, look, it's hard to know what to do next. And it's not necessarily that's a complex problem, and it's a complex thing to know where to come at it. Clearly, you were talking about financial literacy before. That's something that some people feel like is a big part of the key, and it may be part of the solution. It's hard to argue against financial literacy, even though I agree with you that it's not the solution to the entire problem. There are other issues. People taking it from the regulation side, I don't understand enough of that to know all the things that can help there. There clearly is something to be said, but as we saw with CRM2 here in Canada, that there's regulation that can be fairly toothless and can actually change very little. And I would say the same kind of warnings about these regulations that are coming up to try to limit how you can use titles in the financial industry and kind of, what's a planner and what counts as a planner and what education you need to have. These are good spirit of the rules, but how are you going to make it? And how do you actually allow for the minutia of having it? It's a more challenging problem than just some of these black and white regulations. And so there's real challenges out there. And I don't know what it is, but I do love the kind of core of it, trying to get to what the real issue is. And I think the real issue is what you were talking about trust. And it really does boil down to trust. And if everybody isn't on equal footing in the sense of there's just all the cards are on the table, good work can't be done. And it's not fair. I don't care how childish and naive that sounds, to have a system that requires the vulnerable, both information wise, which happen at all income levels, and to have a system that's stacked against them and that they don't even know, Well,
and listen, the vulnerable people that can't afford to pay $2,000 for a financial plan, we'll just put a pin in sort of that price, let's say.
Yeah.
They're not paying $2,000 a year to their advisor either.
No.
And the business, and I know that there are a lot of advisors that don't pay attention to the compensation grid and certainly aren't saying, well, I notice I got a check for like $5.28 from your commission, so I'm going to give you $5.28 worth of work. But unless they're extremely independent, those people are under an enormous amount of pressure from management, from the compensation grid, from the fact that they have their own mortgage to pay, to make sure that in some way people who are paying them less are getting less. That's why it's never in kind of the retail world, but there are A clients and there are D clients. And the whole idea is, okay, let's make sure that there's much less time. We'll call it efficiency. We'll do all these things to make it seem, but really it's let's spend less money and time on the people that can pay us less and more money and time on the people who can pay us more.
Look, it's a complicated problem. And it's even more further complicated by what you just said, the fact that you have a whole bunch of people that are just trying to make their way and earn a living, and it's really easy when you just think about the billionaires and bank CEOs and stuff like that, but really you've got a bunch of bankers and people that call themselves financial advisors at banks that we're talking about that want to pay their mortgage and support their kids, and it's like, but you can't, you have to remember, and I know that it sucks, and I know it seems like I'm coming at it from a high horse, but it's just like that. It's easy to turn everybody into numbers, and it's easy to turn all these issues into numbers and to look at exactly what you've been talking about. And yeah, that's the way you make a good business. But and this is totally naive, but I just believe that the way you make money matters, and it's people. This is a service business, and it's got to. I just think that there's a way that both parties can get what they need.
So when I started in banking in 2005, I was going to say 2005, in the aught fives, when I started in banking, although those many moons ago, we were just transitioning over into a sales-based system where there were quotas, and there were like the tellers weren't just there to help people figure out how come this payment bounced or where, whatever. It was, do you have a visa? Or like they had quotas that they had to fill, and we all did. And those people, the lifer tellers that were just like, this doesn't make any sense. They had oriented their brains that they were in a service-based industry. That it goes right back to what we were talking about before, banking, basic banking services as a service. And so again, we live in a society where a lot of the responsibility to pay for your own retirement, let's say, or bring you up to a certain minimum income level. A lot of that. So there's some levels at the province and the government the province and the federal level to pay for, like there's CPP and there's OAS and those types of things. But essentially the responsibility to have anything more than that minimum income, it now devolves down to the person, the individual. And they have to go, again, there's a point here, and it has to do with going back and being in banking in 2005 and transitioning from the service industry. So these companies, these banks are allowed to extract enormous amounts of money from people whose responsibility is now not just to make a living today, but to save up some of that living if they want to have, an income of higher than $18,000 a year in the future. And so to have made that transition into sales, it really does underlie, it's really just it's just a profit-driven business. But can we say that this service is essential and therefore it has to be a service? At some level, it has to be a service, and it can't be a product-driven sale. Like, again, in Sandy's ideal world where there's all sorts of kooky things, imagine if the bank was a service again. I mean, I was paid a salary. I didn't think that I'm not on commission. I don't know what you're talking about. Trailer commissions were paid to the branch. We've talked about this, right? It's exactly the same system. It just is insulated one step, but I still have to go and explain what I sold, right, to my manager. Imagine if you were free to imagine if anybody that worked in a bank, all of their like performance scorecards had to do with
service.
And how healthy that person's finances were, irrespective of whether they had just paid their mortgage off and didn't replace it with a secured home equity line of credit, or you know what I mean? Like all the traditional, more kind of better healthy indicators. And it was about service and people kind of feeling There's so much there. I can't even
No,
breathe anymore.
no, but it's like the the full circle thing is that the bank's arguments right now and the financial industry's arguments against this fiduciary rule
Yeah.
are based in the idea that they need to be allowed to provide basic services, financial services, for low-income people or for people that can't afford to find help in other places. And your reminder that the bank system is no longer a service system, it's a product-based system, just goes to show you, like, that's what they're fighting against. They don't want to have to change the way they sell products and the way that they but it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, or at least it's, like a llama in sheep's clothing, where you're like, oh no, that's too similar. It's like a goldfish
Dog in
in
sheep's clothing.
I don't know. It's like it's not necessarily like I think the services are better too, but it's not like it's just the fact that they're selling it as one thing, and it's another thing, and they're standing on a platform saying we need to be allowed to offer services to these people, and you're like, you're not a service industry.
Yeah.
And so that's not what you're doing. And if you're doing it, it's peripheral, it's not a focus, and it's not guaranteed to be any good. And if it is good, it's an accident. It's not due to your brilliance.
No. It's as if, I mean, the service layer is really the same as public charitable giving on the behalf of a corporation. It's there because the corporation wants that as a tax credit.
Yeah.
Very rarely does it, like, it's not like, oh, gee, how can we make the world a better place? Let's cure breast cancer. Again, so cynical. But if that was the aim, would they need to spend a lot of money on all the other stuff? Like, couldn't you just give money to the Breast Cancer Foundation or whatever? Anyways, tangential again. But the service, it really is. It's to, like, keep coming to us. We're not rapacious people just trying to make a buck off of you.
Yeah.
We're here to help you.
Yeah.
Look at us help. Everybody gather around. We're helping.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Well, and people, because it's a whole spectrum, people have been helped.
Yeah. Other people have been not helped.
And other people have not been not helped.
In capitals.
And it's so quickly we forget things like the Wells Fargo scandal, which just happened, where the bank was clearly being a product business,
Or TD and CIBC and I can't remember the other one, so I'm not going to name it, double dipping on client fees for private clients and managed clients.
And it's just...
That was like yesterday. There
you go. Like... probably will be forgotten by the time we post this, but so the example works completely well.
Perfectly.
It's just, there's no accountability. It's alternate facts is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a way of spinning it, because the people that are in the system, all the compliance officers, all the people that are like, listen, my whole job is making sure that all of these frontline salespeople are doing their job according to securities law. But it's not according to the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
It's according to, did you fill out the KFC? Or the KFC. Full circle call back. Did you fill out the KFC? Did you fill out the KYC? Did you make sure their signature is here and here and here and here and here? It's not, did you help that person? Which, of course, I mean, how do you check for compliance with, did you help that person? Unless you're in the room with them and you know everything about them. But there's an incredible amount of money already being spent on living up to the regulations that there already are. And so from a business perspective and from a day-to-day activity perspective, everybody that's sitting in an office is going, oh, what new thing do we have to do now? And I can tell you that the monthly compliance meeting where everybody has to say, I have no material changes to my securities registration, I'm not bankrupt, my name is still this, all of them are saying, what is my compliance officer going to tell me now? And the only way they're thinking about it is, okay, now you have this, now we have previously there was form 8002PF2, and you had to get their signature on line 4 and line 7. Now it's form 800PF4, and you have to get initials here and here and here instead. Also, you have to print into a paper airplane and fly it to the compliance office.
Well, and
that's it.
It's filling it with all this. It's the same thing the finance industry does in general for the personal, like for a personal person, for an individual person. It's the idea you cram it full of all these acronyms and distance. Just get distance away from the fact that the real question is, what do I want? And how do I build it? And what are the tools that are available? It's the same thing for the people at the financial industry. It's just like how do I get through these forms and check the right boxes and increase the right metrics? And you forget that, I think it's easy to forget and understandable to just forget that that's getting in the way of you maybe doing what you want to do for some people, which is trying to just deliver the help that people want. It's just because there's all these things, there's forms and all these places to sign, and this number here, and did this number go up, and like, how am I being graded? And look, like I said before, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with trying to make a living, and this is how people come back all the time, being like, well, like, these nice people that make their money off commissions that are like, I'm not a bad person, I'm a good person. Like, why are you trying to change my ability to make a living? And you're like, I get that, but at a certain point, we need to call a spade a spade. Like, just recognize what the system is and that it's not helping, and that it's not what you say it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think of the finance industry, and this is really glib, and it doesn't take into account that human beings rely on this to make their money and have been building their life around this continuing to be the way they make their money. But I think of it as the record industry. Like, at what point do we say the labels clamp down on digital downloads, and don't change the model because we've built our profitability on that model. And no matter, even if people don't want to buy that model anymore, let's make sure that that's the only model they can buy, and shut down any competition around it and any talk of making something easier or regulating or anything, because this is the way we make our money, and screw you if you want to, like, mess with it.
No, and I think I like that analogy, because the record industry in that model, it's not serving the artists and it's not serving the audience. And in the same way, I would say it's not serving the banking system, it's not serving the people that really want to, are financial professionals that really want to help people. It's not serving them, and it's not serving the people that need help.
Yeah.
And so everybody's locked into a system that maybe works for a few, but does not work for everybody. And like you said, they're handed a manual, if they're lucky, to say, this is how you've got to try to fit into the system, or just try to figure it out.
Yeah.
Hope
you don't make too big of a mistake.
Yeah. It won't have any major it won't have any major effects on your life. Except it will.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Oops.
Man.
Well, there we solved all the problems of the world.
Yikes.
Well done.